podcast for those who suffer, which is everyone.
It's a space where we can speak honestly about what it feels like to be in desolate places without losing hope.
Welcome to In the Thicket. Welcome back to this week's episode of In the Thicket. We're so happy to have you with us. This week we were joined by John Taylor, who shares with us about healing and learning to trust the Lord and about sitting in that place of uncertainty that can be very painful. He shares a lot about how he went from planning his life 40 steps ahead of time to really having the Lord strip away so much that he could just follow the Lord into the dark one step at a time. Hey, everybody.
Hello. It's me. Hi. The problem. It's me.
And who are you? Just for people listening, you know?
I'm Erin.
I don't know, Erin, if you can do that with
also
like
Taylor
copyright.
Swift. I know. Oh my gosh, we're gonna post this on YouTube, and they're 100% gonna like, because it shows it goes through the copyright thing. Yeah. So I'm gonna have to cut that part out. But anyways, I'm Erin. How are you? Who are you, Nicole?
I'm Nicole.
And I'm Rachel. And you have somehow stumbled onto our podcast In the Thicket. So welcome. We're so happy that you're here. And if you're watching us on YouTube, we are joined by our guest today. Hello, guest. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm John. I have no great song lyrics to offer you. Sorry,
That's good. It helps us with legal issues if you don't.
Yeah, exactly. See, I am the problem. It's me.
It just works over and over and over again.
I know.
Oh my goodness.
Man.
I know.
Yeah, it's good to see you all. Okay. So this episode, I'm just gonna be honest with everybody listening. This episode is coming out and it's 2023, which is mind boggling because we're currently in 2022. We're recording around American Thanksgiving. I'm just going to be honest. I'm pulling back the veil. This is how podcasts are done, guys. You know, time. What is time? You know, when you're doing stuff like this, it's just
sometimes you recorded the day before. Sometimes you recorded the year before. You know.
Yeah, that's right.
That's right.
Yeah.
So,
but okay.
Oh.
Also timely.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, I was just going to talk about existential crises, but it's probably better the direction that you're going.
I was going to talk about Taylor Swift. So I don't know.
That's probably
Let's
better.
Do that one. Let's do that one.
Well, because Erin, you just quoted her song. So, okay. So I'm living in Nashville, right? So all of my 18 to 22-year-old students, who are mostly girls, love Taylor Swift, right? So this is the big thing of last week is everyone's trying to get tickets and they all know all their songs.
The Swifties, right? Yeah.
You know,
there's all
and
the memes with Ticketmaster and the Swifties.
Oh yeah, exactly. They, and I'm teaching music therapy. And so we had somebody was doing like a demo intervention and they brought up Ticketmaster to be like, when I say this word, like play how you feel on the instrument. And they said Ticketmaster. And immediately it was like, all the angry playing came out. So, but I listened. So I listened I've listened to not the whole album yet, but I've been enjoying it. So have you guys listened to the new Taylor Swift album?
I have not.
Okay.
I'm not going to lie. I've been listening to it on repeat. So
okay. See, I thought so.
Because I never liked Taylor Swift really. I mean, sorry, Taylor, like your other stuff, whatever, like so catchy songs and you just know the lyric. But then she came out with Folklore and Evermore, which are like it's because they're more of like indie folk albums. You know? Yeah, they're so good. Like they just like really mix it up with, oh my gosh, with the time signatures and the lyrics are good. Like and she really is good lyrically. Like she gets some interesting lyrics. Anyway, so I've been listening to this one pretty much on repeat, except for there's like some songs. There's one that's like Karma, where it's like Karma is my boyfriend.
Oh yeah, that's like a weird. It's like weird.
I'm like, wow,
dude, you're gonna get us muted again.
I know. Dang it, it's me. I'm the problem. It's me.
Oh,
anyways,
no.
That's so
yeah. So, anyways, yeah. So, John, are you a fan of Taylor Swift?
So I'm pretty sure I would recognize a lot of Taylor Swift's music, but like right now I'm struggling to recall a single song name, and I'm drawing a blank.
Fair enough.
That's the extent of my relationship with T Swift.
Okay.
Fair enough.
You would hear her. This is the thing that I really, she is, I think, like a very good, I don't think you can argue the fact that she's a very good songwriter. She just is a very good songwriter. And I was always like, I just want to be able to do this where I like write a hit song that grocery stores will play for 50,000 years.
Right.
Because can you imagine? Like, it's like, that's it. That's your whole career done.
Mm-hmm.
Like, who can go to a concert as well? I'll just write a song that people can stop to in the grocery store. And you're made for
you
life.
Just reap the royalties.
What's the iconic grocery store song? Like, what comes to mind when you think of
Love Story? I think it's
Is
Love
it?
Story.
Interesting.
I mean, it's not the one that comes to mind when I don't know really what comes, but I remember being in the store and being like, they're playing Love Story, and it's like 15 years old.
Right.
But they also play, like, a lot of songs they play in the grocery store are like kind of like, adult.
Yeah. I think of like Africa by Toto as like the classic grocery store song.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Someone take me away. I always do. I call it grandmother singing when there's something like that I don't know the words to, because my grandmother used to do that at mass all the time. If she would be like, for the meek, and so she would just do these like weird mumbled words between the ones that she actually knew, but also she was hard of hearing, so she would do it loudly.
Amazing.
And then, or like when we were walking in one time, she would say hello. She's like so polite, and then she would turn and whisper and be like, I have no idea who that woman is. But it's like so loud because she can't hear. Anyway,
that's awesome. I love your grandmother.
I know, she's so sweet. Grandma Forte, you can pray for us today. We will take all your prayers. Yeah.
And it's just so genuine. You just like, I love the simplicity and genuineness. It's awesome.
Totally.
Yeah, I know.
So precious.
I know.
Grandmas. I feel like it's true, when you get to that age, you're just like, I don't care. I don't care what you think about me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's like, that's kind of awesome. I'm looking forward to that. Hopefully one day.
Yeah.
So T Swift, Grandma's in Heaven.
Mm-hmm.
Teardrops on my guitar is that's the song of hers that I really don't like. Just going back to that question.
Okay.
I just was like, meh, that's kind of, anyway.
Yeah.
See, the one that's been ruined for me is Shake It Off, because it was when I was like really practicing music therapy clinically a lot. I did that song a lot as like a movement song, and we'd sing Shake It Off, and then we would like stomp our feet and we'd clap our hands and we do all the things. And now whenever I'm anywhere else, like at a wedding or something, immediately all I can think of is like my work. And so I no longer enjoy the song as a song. It's for me, it's like a work song. So it's interesting. Yeah.
So I have the best segue into our
Oh, good.
I know what it's going to be already.
Right? Yeah, it's not hard. Right. So talking about Taylor Swift, now we're transitioning to a different Taylor.
I did not catch that. I am again the problem. Okay. That's good.
Some wordplay there for you. Yeah. Okay. So hi, John.
Taylor.
Hi.
This is the Taylor I want to focus on today. So everybody listening, you would have seen the title of our podcast, and we're talking about uncertainty, we're talking about healing, we're talking about trusting God. And we're so excited to have John just be here and share his story with us and just kind of dive into these parts of our lives as Catholics, as Christians, that are just very real. And they're not easy. They're not like cut and dry. They're kind of messy. It's a messy business. But it's beautiful. It's beautiful. There's so much that the Lord does in that messy kind of reality. So we'll start off. Maybe John, you can just tell people a little bit about who you are and your story, and just a little bit about John Taylor.
Sure. Yeah, it's great to be here. So yes, I am John Taylor. Also a drummer from Duran Duran, but like that's a whole tangent we probably don't have time for.
Awesome.
It comes up more often
great.
than
Really?
A lot. I'm not so familiar obviously with their music, but Duran, I'm like, yeah, great. Cool.
You know what, that makes
John,
more sense than Taylor Swift. It does.
For a second I thought you were saying that you used to be the drummer for Duran Duran, and I was like, what? Cool. Okay.
This is the right podcast? Yeah.
Don't you have to be like 60 to be? I feel like you're definitely not that old. Like, sure.
I am in fact John Taylor. Yeah, and some of you, I think some of you know aspects of my story. I think to tell it properly, I love context and history. So just in terms of how I grew up and the very early stages of, I think, the story that we'll talk about tonight. So I grew up in Toronto, one of 6 kids in a very devout Catholic family. And I think as many people experience, we had a very imperfect family in many ways. And my parents ended up separating when I was about 15. And I think, thinking back, there's so many levels and perspectives that I might sort of relive that experience. One for sure would be the devout Catholic family with 6 kids and the parents splitting up, and that's unusual. I think from a very young age, I think we all sensed, we were quite different than other families, surrounded by amazing and a lot of large Catholic families. So my cousins have 10 kids. My best friend's family has 11 kids. So we just grew up constantly surrounded by people we could play with and do sports with and go to school with. Very blessed, I would say, in many ways. And what happened, I think, as a result of one of the outcomes, I would say, of that separation was that my siblings and I, as far as I can tell, we all left the faith. I think we had a pretty distant, somewhat cold, very strict relationship with the faith. And so we all left the faith. And this was about 15 years, when I was 15 years old. And I'm the 5th of 6. So I have 4 older siblings, 1 younger brother. And so I sort of ended up going through later teenage, young adult, university years, drifting a lot. And I think a lot of people have experienced their own kinds of drifting in life, really looking back with not much sense of identity, especially in terms of masculinity and who am I supposed to be as a person, but as a man. And I sort of always had a level of connection, I would say, with the faith, probably mostly connected with guilt. God bless her. My mom, I think, is in many ways the reason why I'm the man I am today. And I could almost picture her saying, like, did you go to mass? And and I'm just like, my life is not really a Catholic life, Mom. I'm not sure. She wouldn't have known. I'd gone away to university. And so I sort of went through life and into my 20s, just sort of following the hopes and dreams that I think come across people related to careers and relationships. I think related to our family upbringing, and probably very connected with our family situation and my parents' marriage, is that I always found it quite difficult to connect with people in romantic relationships. So whether it was sort of like a fear of going down the same path as my parents, or commitment and various aspects of those types of dynamics in anyone who comes from a broken family might experience some version of that related to their family upbringing. I'm sure there's many other reasons as well. And really, God be praised, during the year of mercy in 2015, 2016, I had a really profound reversion to the faith. The Newman Center here in Toronto was a big part of that. Meeting Catholic community was completely lacking in my life up until that point. And so I started attending faith. I actually went to faith studies. So as a child, we actually grew up like literally being read and learning from the catechism, from canon law, from popes encyclicals. Like, this is not your typical way of being introduced to the faith as a kid. So I knew a lot of things, or remembered a lot of things. But if any of you have gone through the faith, the very common, I can't remember the name, but that common
Discovery,
the Discovery series, and like, what does God's love mean to me? And I'm like, whoa, I've never actually thought about what this meant, despite being able to quote or reference verses and documents. And that was, as you can imagine, quite life-changing. And I would say, a good 4 or 5 years, I got involved with a spiritual director and everything, sacraments and prayer and adoration. And all of a sudden I had my friendship circle included nuns, which was a very strange reality.
I love that.
Like, wow, this is kind of cool. And so by that point, so I think I was around 30 at that point, and saying, oh, this is providing the meaning, the stability, the direction, the motivation that I think I've been lacking in life. This is great. I'm ready to receive vocation. Like, let's go. Like, this is very exciting. And again, like, those years of formation were so important and a complete gift. And so around in 2020, I ended up getting into a relationship during, I don't know if you remember this thing called the pandemic. vague memories.
A blip.
Yeah, right.
Radar. Yeah.
I got into a relationship, just a wonderful relationship. It was a distance relationship, so there was a lot of complexities related to the pandemic and to life and uncertainty about the future and the way the world was going and whether we'd have a world in a couple of years or not.
Right.
And not really to get into the relationship at all, but it was a very special. It was just a bit of it was a very providential, very special, very unique relationship. And I remember thinking, okay, so is this what people feel? I'd never felt deep down that idea of like, could this actually lead to marriage? I think for the first time in my life, I remember thinking, whoa, this is real. This is not Hallmark. This is not, not to sort of take anything away from previous relationships, but
I thought you were going to say not to take anything away from Hallmark. And I was like, no, we can take all that you want away from Hallmark. That's fine.
By the way, I do not endorse. I'm not receiving any monetary compensation.
Listen, again, we're Hallmark. Censorship. We're just
clearing the air. Yeah.
Sweet.
And it was a beautiful relationship, and it ended. And I thought that I really thought, okay, I think I'm in the right place of attachment or detachment, depending on how you look at it. I think this is how I need to be approaching the idea of dating someone, with the possibility of with the very real possibility of marriage, with integrity and character. I think this is the kind of person that I want to be as a Catholic and as a man. And I thought I was really prepared for the inevitable, the possibility, I should say, that a distance relationship during a pandemic, when you can't travel and stay at home and don't look at anybody, there might be some challenges to getting to know someone and growing in intimacy, and all that kind of stuff. And I thought I was very prepared for it. And what happened after the breakup completely caught me off guard. And it was essentially the onset of looking back, I would say a depression. And so for people who know me, my friends and family might sort of call me maybe annoyingly optimistic sometimes. I love silver linings. They're everywhere. And I'm also someone who loves to do things. I can sort of do or problem solve my way out of a lot of situations in life, resting on optimism and proactivity. And we'll find a way. It's not that big of a deal. And so basically the symptoms of depression, which was, not being able to eat, to sleep, to work, to socialize very effectively, completely caught me off guard. And it was especially challenging because I thought, but I was in the right disposition. I had the right disposition. So what the heck is going on here? Again, because I like doing my way out of problems, I started working with a life coach, a really great Catholic life coach. We worked together about 12 weeks because I thought, oh, maybe there's some big area, in my life that I need to address around career being a big part of, your lived experience and vocation. And he gave me over the weeks we worked together, he would give me different types of homework. One of them, this is just random because I'm thinking of it now, but he got me to watch The Chosen.
Nice.
Really interesting.
Yeah.
And that'll, I think, come in a bit later in the story. But he also introduced me to a podcast really offered by two Catholic therapists called Restore the Glory.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Dr. Bob Schutz and Jake Kim.
Yeah, two of my favorite people just to listen to and to listen to them share their hearts and their wisdom and experience. And so he got me to listen to this. One of his pieces of homework was listen to a multi-episode segment on the anatomy of a wound.
Yes.
And so I went into it. I was like, hey, I'm doing the homework. Fine, great. And I went into it. I was like, whoa, this is very interesting. Something that really jumped out at me is, and I hope I'm not misquoting, but the idea that wounds come from basically sort of violations against love. And those are they take place in two sort of buckets or categories. One is a sort of an actual violation of love. And the second would be an absence of love, or a holding back, or a withdrawal of love.
Yeah.
And as I got to the end of this life coaching, it became apparent that I would probably benefit from working with a therapist. And I had never considered working with a therapist. I'm like, why would I need a therapist? Like, life is tough, stuff happens, you suck
Silver
it up.
lining. We could
with a bit of optimism and a little bit of
hard work,
little hard work and sparkle.
Yeah.
You can get.
And I'm like, this is what I've done my whole life. I love it. It's been really helpful in many situations, and sometimes a hindrance in others, obviously. But and I started working with a therapist, and sort of what became apparent was, again, I'm now able to sort of summarize something that happened over months. But for me, it felt like some of these wounds that went all the way back to my childhood would be like this deep hole, or like a cave, underground cave in your heart or in your being. And over time, like you kind of just like pile. I love analogies. I'm a very visual thinker. So you kind of like pile life experiences and distractions and band-aids, and you just kind of pile life, and you kind of bury it, and it goes farther and farther down. But inevitably, we get wounded, we get hurt, we have disappointments and setbacks. And those are like holes kind of being drilled down from the surface, but they don't ever kind of go that deep, or depending on the nature of the situation. And all I could sort of picture what was coming out in therapy was, for whatever reason, the circumstances surrounding the loss of this relationship were like a drill that went all the way down and hit that underground cave. And it just went boom.
Black hole.
And I'd never really like thought that was possible, even thought very deeply about that. But I was like, oh, so it's kind of about this relationship, but also not really. There's a much bigger story here around a lifetime now, over 20 years ago now, of family and childhood wounds. So as that's, if any of you have been through therapy, it's, in my experience, it's not very quick work. It's slow and deliberate, and there's a lot of relationship building. So as that's going on, I'm also just really struggling to work. I would sort of have this really frustrating experience of being really lonely and really socially anxious around people. And I'm just like, are you kidding me? Like, can I at least I can handle one or the other, but like both. And what I was so grateful for, and really what makes sense in God's providence, is that 4, 5, 6 years of formation leading up to this experience, where I was naturally thinking also through a spiritual lens, in addition to a physical or professional or social. And all I could really sense was like what many holy people have talked about in terms of like a stripping away. So hopes, dreams, desires, like some of you know, I love running. I do a lot of running. It's never something I need to go trick myself into going for a run. It's my go-to to think or to recharge or even to rest, which sounds bizarre to
I don't even know how we're friends. That's how much you love running and how little much I despise it.
That's got to be grace. If that's not
it
grace,
is, exactly.
I don't know what is.
That's exactly it. Yeah.
And I would just have to drag my butt out the door to go do the thing that just is like, it's like eating or sleeping or walking, just, and professional, I had like no professional outlook. There was no hope or dream. I couldn't even see where the future was going. All I knew was like, this is not how I thought life is going to, or is supposed to, or I'm not deserving of this. And during that summer, which is actually just now the summer of last year, I really clung to the support of a great spiritual director. Family and friends were being really wonderful with me. But I didn't know, and it's really scary, I think, for me to consider it, but the question of how long can I survive like this was crossing my mind. And it's honestly, there's something, you grew up as a good faithful Catholic and do this and don't do this. When you think about something like, suicide or suicidal ideation, you're like, that there's no place for that. Like you're a person of faith, and I don't know that I ever actively thought about it, but it was more desperation that said,
Yeah.
I don't know if I can keep going.
Yeah.
One of the things that really got me through this period of time, as I said, friends, family were so amazing, but it was so hard to share it with them in a way that would alleviate my pain in much of a significant way. But I constantly had Dr. Bob and Jake. I would listen to these episodes, and then there'd be just the thing that I needed to hear at that time. So I have this really distinct memory of, I think it's Jake, and he says, when healing doesn't come, I find myself at a fork in the road, and the one path says God is not who he says he is. He's tricking me, he's punishing me, he doesn't like me, I'm not his chosen. And the other path says God is who he says he is. He's a good loving father, and he's doing something that I cannot yet see. And I constantly found myself again at that fork in the road saying, okay, I know the answer. I know which path to take intellectually. And I'm just dragging myself not to go down this other path. So out of sheer desperation, I didn't know if I need to take a leave from work. It was so embarrassing. I just thought, I'm John. Like this is like I just solved my way through problems. Like I don't have this glamorous life, but very self-dependent. And I said, I need to get away. I need to go on a vacation and just step away from work, and I need to go on a retreat. Those are the two things in my mind. To make a long story a tiny bit shorter, the vacation path just evaporated. I was going to go on a trip with a good friend. We travel really well together. And he said, I'm so sorry. This unbelievable situation has come up at work and I can't travel. We can reimburse any costs we've incurred. And I was like, yeah, the costs don't matter. And I was like, I had no desire to go. I love traveling and the adventure of travel. I had no desire really just to go and just, travel the world or anything. It was to get away with this very specific, wonderful friend. And I by God's providence, I found a silent Ignatian retreat, the only one that was available on like a week's notice. And on Labor Day weekend of last year, I went on this 3-day retreat. And I showed up at the retreat, and I'm meeting my spiritual accompanier for the weekend. And she says, hey, what brings you here? And so I kind of told her, I've had this experience over the last year. I have a lifetime experience. It feels like a truck just hit my life. And I'm like, I don't know why this couldn't have happened to me 10 years ago when I could have used all that wonderful time to have sorted this out. There's the fear, the anxiety. I can't make simple decisions like what to make for dinner or what to buy from the grocery store without anxiety. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. That was the most frustrating part. This is stupid. I hate this. It's stupid, and I want it to stop.
Like love stories playing in the background.
And I'm like, I hate that song. No, I'm kidding. Rachel's cringing somewhere. Yeah.
So great.
And I meet with my spiritual accompanier on the Friday, and she said, I would invite you to pray with this line from scripture, be still and know that I am God. And I said, okay. So the Friday night, I'm sitting with this, and I couldn't get past be still. The and know that I am God was so big and so overwhelming. So Saturday morning, I meet with her, and I said, I got really stuck on be still. And she said, great. That's what I want you to do today. I want you to pray with those words. And I was like, the two words just the two of them. And she said, yeah. And I was like, okay. And it was an unstructured silent retreat. So there weren't meditations or reflections. And I went and I sat with those two words all day. And as the day went on, I just got angrier and angrier and angrier. And I was like, are you kidding me? Like, be still. I've checked all the boxes of all the things you're supposed to do to be a good Catholic, especially a good young adult Catholic. What more can I do? Be still, the relationship, the depression, everything. So Sunday morning is now sort of the retreat's wrapping up. And my bags are packed. I'm sitting in her office, and she's like, "So how did that go yesterday?" And I said, "It was awful."
Yeah.
And I explained to her, just as all these questions, every fear, every question, every anxiety, every doubt I've had in life, like I'm not good enough, or I'm going to fail, or what if I'm rejected, or it would all come up. It was like just looking at all the stuff that you've ever wanted to bury about yourself, and just sitting there, like not being able to do anything about it. And she said, do you have any sense or idea of who you're angry at? And so for many years in my young adult years, I was really angry at my parents, especially my dad. I blamed him for a lot of things. I didn't understand his context and where he was coming from in life. And again, through the grace of God, as part of this reversion, I had a reconciliation with my dad, and I thought, great, like that's the big burden off the shoulders. Now I'm free. And I'm sitting here on this weekend thinking, I think I'm angry at God. Despite, trying to go to daily mass and spiritual direction and adoration and daily prayer, I think I'm angry at God. Like who else could change or affect,
right,
or have kept this from happening, or is just letting me sit here? And she said, John, I hate to see you leave the retreat in this state. Do you think you might want to stay longer? And I was like, oh, is there an option? Like I signed up for a 3-day retreat. I paid. I didn't know there's like an extension option. And she said, pray about it. Think about it. Pray about it. We have mass, and lunch. And then usually the retreat will end. And I went to the mass. And so I was actually in Montreal. And so there was a bishop or archbishop of Montreal was presiding over the mass in French. My French is terrible. So I can sort of understand parts of the liturgy. But when he gets to the homily, besides words here and there, I have no idea what he's saying.
Yeah.
And in the middle of his homily, so he's preaching in French. And in the middle of his homily, he just says this one little thing in English. I have no idea why. In his mind, he switched. But in the middle of his homily, he stops speaking in French and he says, you didn't bring yourself on this retreat. God has called you here.
Oh.
And then continue speaking in French. And I'm thinking like, okay. And I sensed there was definitely unresolved something. I said, okay, I wonder, is this me like saying I'm just going about this all the wrong way? There's a surrender, there's a whatever, there's something missing. I'm not grasping something from this retreat experience. So I went back and I didn't tell her why, but I just said, I think I'll stay. She said, great. We can go day by day until the end of the week. And I will be here every day that you want to meet with me. If you're still here every day, I will meet with you. And I was like, okay. And so the retreatants are all leaving and I'm staying. Weird. I went and unpacked my bag.
That's so funny.
Strangest feeling. And I went out onto the porch, beautiful porch overlooking the river. And there was another guy, an older gentleman sitting there. And we just started chatting because we could finally talk after 3 days of silence. And we're just sharing little life stories. And he's reading actually this book, Henry Nouwen's book,
Nice.
Life of the Beloved. And he said, have you read this book? And I said, no. And he said, I bought it here. And it's really, he said, it's really good. And I would like to give it to you. I was like to borrow, or he's like, no, as a gift. I said, wow. I said, great. In my head, I'm thinking a little book is like the last thing I need right now, but this is a really nice gesture. And he said, great. He said, I have a couple pages left. I'm leaving tomorrow, but I will find you before I leave and I'll give you the book. And I said, great. So I went and I did what I tend to do when I want to think and solve problems. I went on a run. Because now I was like, now I have no clue why I'm here or where this is going. I don't know if at the end of the week I will be any different than I am now, and if the confusion will have lifted or not. And I went on a run, and of course, it just started pouring rain on me. And so I'm running through this trail system with mud splashing everywhere. I'm like, I don't care. Honestly, I don't care. This is very freeing in some way. And as I'm running, I'm playing over the bishop's words. The bishop's words just went over and over and over in my head. And it started with what he said, which is, God has called you here.
Mm.
And as I kept saying that, God has called you here, God has called you here, it became, I have called you here.
Mm.
I have called you here. And then I have called you by name.
Mm.
I have called you by name. I've called you by name. And I took that experience and I sat with it and I prayed in the chapel. I was like, wow, okay. Like, did I make that up? Did I hear that? Is that my imagination? The next morning I meet with my spiritual accompanier and I just said, this is what happened. She was like, John, this is amazing. And I was like, I don't get it. Like that was unusual. I get it. I get that. But like, what do I do? Typical me. What do I do with this?
Yeah.
Mm.
And she said, well, you keep going back into the chapel and into the books and the reading. And I was like, what do you want me to do? Like, I'm on a retreat. I went and prayed in the chapel. And she's like, where did you get this, receive this inspiration? And I said, I was out on the trail. And she said, then go back out on the trail. You've stayed enough in the chapel. And I thought, wow, no one's ever kicked me out of the chapel before on a retreat.
That's right.
And so I started going back out onto the trail. Again, this is another day. And I'm like, here's my money. I'll stay the day. What the heck am I doing here? And I remember her saying as well, she said, John, you need to move from head to heart. And I've heard that in, theology of the body and in other areas. She's like, there's some blockage that's stopping you from receiving whatever the Lord is trying to give you on this retreat. Okay, here we go. Round 2, 3, 4. I don't know what it is by now. And I'm heading back out down the super long driveway. And this was the state of my anxiety and tension at that point. I was debating whether or not to go back and get a sweatshirt. And what would normally be like a 3 to 5 second decision, I literally stood there for like 2 minutes. Do I go? Do I stay? It's all the way back up in my room. And this has been my life for the last 6 months or something. So eventually I was like, okay, in case it gets cold, I'm going to go grab a sweatshirt. I go all the way back up to my room. I come back down and I hear someone call my name. And it's the guy with his book. He's like, hey, I've been looking for you everywhere. I'm leaving and I wanted to give you the book. I said, great. I took the book. Thank you. We chatted for a bit. It said bye. He went on his way. And I had the book with me. I'm like, I'm not going back up to my room. It's too far. It's this huge premises. And so I went out and I'm now walking on the trail with this book in my hand. And after about 15 or 20 minutes, I just thought, I was fiddling through the book and I opened the book to where the bookmark is. And I just started reading. And I would love to share with you what I read, if that's okay. So I read from the top of the page where the bookmark was left, and it read, but as long as you are waiting for that mysterious moment, you will go on running helter-skelter, always anxious and restless, always lustful and angry, never fully satisfied. You know that this is the compulsiveness that keeps us going and busy, but at the same time makes us wonder whether we're getting anywhere in the long run. This is the way to spiritual exhaustion and burnout. This is the way to spiritual death. And I was just standing in the middle of a trail system by myself. And I thought, I don't know if I could read something that spiritually describes more accurately what I'm experiencing inside. And I kept on walking. And after a while, I was like, well, that was interesting. So I opened back up the book and I kept on reading. And it said, well, you and I don't have to kill ourselves. We are the beloved. We are intimately loved long before our parents, teachers, spouses, children, and friends loved or wounded us. That's the truth of our lives. That's the truth I want you to claim for yourself. That's the truth spoken by the voice that says, you are my beloved. Listening to that voice with great inner attentiveness, I hear at my center words that say, I have called you by name. From the very beginning, you are mine and I am yours. And it goes on.
So crazy.
And I stood there like, going back to The Chosen for a second. I don't. Hopefully this is not a spoiler alert, but that first episode is Mary Magdalene. When she's in her chaos and brokenness, I think I was just contemplating suicide, and this crazy stranger Jesus is sort of harassing her in her mind. She's running away from him, and he says Mary. He calls her by the most intimate identities, I guess, that she has at that time. And it was, again, I'm not going to start comparing my life to Mary Magdalene's, but it was very much my own version of like, just like a lightning bolt, just went boom. And I said, oh, okay. This is where I need to focus. Belovedness, being called, the personal nature of our childhood in God. And so anyways, a whole bunch of things happened after that. But the next day I walked into this woman's office with my bags all packed, and she was like, oh, this is different. And I was like, yeah, I had a really interesting day, and I think it's time to head back home, head back to life. I think I now have the next piece to focus on, the next step forward. I think there's a lot of work to do here. There was sort of very strange and bizarre healing in the moment, and there was healing that came in the months after. It was never sort of conclusive. I still have some of the questions about my life and my vocation that I had back then, but with just a very, very different disposition, I would say. And then I went back actually into therapy, and therapy actually started making a ton of sense. I actually enjoy it. I really, it's weird, I really enjoy therapy. I think it's so interesting. And maybe because I feel like I've been talking for quite a while now, there's since that time, there's been so many next steps that have sort of led me onto a very unexpected path of just very recently starting a master's in psychotherapy. And it felt like the doors just, like walking down some long hallway, and as you get close to each door, you're like, I don't know, do I have a key? Like, is this a key? Is this a combination lock? Does it open this way or that way? And it would just go, and I was like, okay, I'll go through this door too,
That's so funny.
Anyways, maybe I'll sort of just end that portion of the story there, and just
Yeah, that is such an insane story. Like, I mean, I'll say this because I've been friends with John for a bit, and like, I was friends with you before you went through this. I mean, through it and then after, and like, we didn't see each other that often because it was COVID and stuff like that. But we would check in our friend group, we would sort of check in with each other. And I said this to you before, like before this episode, when we touched base, but I like, you were the same person, but like a different person. After especially the retreat and that kind of like this experience of a new lens, of like the lens of being beloved, like the beloved kind of thing. And there was like a new freedom that just was a part of who you are, or is a part of who you are now, in a way that obviously God always wants that for us our whole lives. But there's a sense in which once we participate in that healing and we like cooperate that healing, and we start to experience that healing, it actually like changes us, like just, and it's not like any specific thing that you say or whatever, it's just the way that you are, like the way that you like in our being, it like changes our mode of operation in the world and like how we just are, which is so cool, because it's like, it's a very visible thing, while at the same time, like, like you said, you still have some of these questions. It's not like it's not like the situation and the circumstances are totally resolved and everything is like you have all the answers. It's not an external thing like that. It's something kind of, so it's just really cool to see, like from the outside too.
I feel like healing is like, it's such a weird thing, because anytime we venture inwards, I feel like the fear is that our worst fears are going to come true, like that we're going to find out that they're true. You know what I mean? Like the wound that says like, you're a dummy, we're going to like come in, and then God is going to confirm that for us. Like, yes, you're an idiot. Like, which is insane. Like, it's exactly what you're talking about though. Like the fork with, that Jake was describing, of like, the God is not good, he's not a good father, he's playing a trick with me, like all of those kind of things. It's like, it's that especially around healing, I find, or when God is going to do something big, it's like the intensity that grows around those things is like unreal. Like it's so big, and it can be so convincing and so real looking and so all encompassing that it can be like, it can feel like there's two forks, but like one fork is like a jumbo thing and the other one is like a chopstick. Like it's, you know what I mean? Like they're not, even though they are, the fork for God like is way bigger in reality, but it's like these skewed perceptions of things that I feel like the enemy is really good at like picking up on, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
and then just like exacerbating those things and making everything so big.
But also, I feel like that's a way in which God, because I share like in some experiences in my life too, where it's like, or I have these experiences too, where the thing that you're most afraid of is the thing that happens in a certain sense. Like God allows it in some ways. Like he's like, yeah, you know what? I'm going to let this happen. And then I'm going to meet you there because you don't need to be afraid of this thing. Like it's because it's not true. But the thing is, like, I've been in situations where I'm like, the thing that I'm most afraid of, which isn't true at a sort of at a deep, deep level, becomes true at an experiential level though. Like, you know, someone like, you know, I mean, we all have this like fear, right, of not being lovable or whatever. And I've had experiences in my life where like out of nowhere, but like very powerful experiences where somebody that I respect and love, like basically told me that, like, you know, in the context of like whatever, a conflict or, you know, different things. And like, you know, I'm very blessed. Most people in my life, and even these people, like we reconciled and things are good. But in certain moments where like that was told to me is precisely at a time where I was like, that is the thing that will break me. If I am told that, it will break me. And then it was told to me, and then it did break me. And then the Lord met me in the utter kind of broken, because I think what God was showing me, which I think is kind of connected maybe to John, some of the things that you're saying, is like, I was already broken there. Like that was the cave, you know, like there was part of me that genuinely did not believe that I was lovable. And I was burying that. And then somebody came along and said, like, you are not lovable. And then that thing that I had actually always believed exploded everywhere. And God was like, this is what we need to, you know, you are lovable. But like, we needed to get to this before I could tell you that, because you weren't acknowledging that this is a lie that you believed, you know, because you were surviving by sort of ignoring that lie.
Yeah. And it's not freedom, you know, like it's not freedom to, like, we can feel like it's free. Even you talking about, John, like some of your other experiences and feeling like free when you got to reconcile with your dad. And there is like, there's a certain level of freedom there, but it's like the freedom, the deepest freedom that the Lord has for us is like core shifting. I don't know if that makes any sense. But, you know? Yeah.
Something that we've been talking about in our community and liberation small group is, well, it was a quote from one of the readings lately, and it talked about crisis versus conflict, and that when something difficult happens, and they use crisis as a word of, it's like kind of like you're talking about, it's sort of a choice moment, and we have a choice to either enter into conflict, to fight against our reality, which, you know, John, when you were saying like, this is so stupid, like I hate this, I don't like this, this is not me, this, you know, or to allow it to kind of hit us in full force and let ourselves sit with it, and let us be open to how is this changing me? I can't change these circumstances. So it's this crisis of, am I going to allow this to then, am I going to allow myself to grow and allow God to grow me in that? That's like, I don't know, I think I'm hearing that, but has that changed, or that frustration? Like even now you say, okay, it's not like everything's perfect and hunky-dory, right? But there's been some change, but that frustration, do you still experience that sometimes, or has that changed, or how does that?
Or what have you found since the retreat time?
We might need like a second episode to cover the post retreat. But one thing I think that's interesting, and I guess men and women, but it might sort of speak to younger men a bit more, is one of the many things that came out of this retreat was, as I went and I went and talked with a good Jesuit priest friend, and I just said, okay, I just had this experience, and I'm not entirely sure what to do next. Like, do I just like, well, that was nice, and then move on with life, or like just spiritually, in my spiritual life, like what tangible next steps? Like, if for someone who knows and walks spiritually with people, like what advice? And I remember him saying, you've received like a pretty substantial grace and blessing, but of course, like there's sort of an obvious question, called to what? And
right.
I said, yeah, it's crossed my mind. And this might give away who the person was, but he said, are you aware I'm the vocations director for the Jesuits? And I was like, I almost didn't come here because you are the vocations director of the Jesuits. We had this really great chat, and I said, Father, I think something that this is really making very clear for me is that in my life, for example, I've always had this real profound desire and respect and love for marriage. And it's not a hallmark. Sorry, just you can edit that out if you it's not a hallmark kind of romanticism. I typically come from the default position that marriage is going to be quite hard. Just because from what I saw in my family growing up. And it was actually, theology of the body and some Pope's encyclicals on teaching, and like, oh, this is amazing. Like, it's so amazing because it's hard, and sort of the amazingness explains the hardness, and, things like that. But I also I really, if I'm being very, very honest with myself, I actually haven't been completely open with vocation. And I've been not interested in entertaining. I've been really scared of the possibility that I might be called to something other than married life.
Right.
And it was so bizarre. And I just found myself saying, oh, because he said, if you would like, you are very welcome we have a come and see weekend coming up in a month or whatever it was. And he said, pray about it. And so I went and I sat with that for a couple of weeks, and I was like, I don't sense, a calling to religious life or priestly life, but in terms of freedom and surrender and really walking that fork in the road, it says, Lord, I trust that you're good, which means if I've missed something, and in all of my chaos, I could absolutely have missed the turn off the road many times. I think this might be a bridge I have to cross with them. So again, just like the last 12 months of my life have been so full of these very unexpected and relatively random occurrences. So I went on a come and see weekend at 36 years old and was like, I'm here. I'm actually here, I remember actually I was driving, it was in Montreal, the come and see was in Montreal. So I was driving to Mass. I was driving from Mass on the way out to Montreal. And I remember it was when we were all masked up, and the priest, as many priests did, they gave the instructions on how to receive communion. It was always different a little bit in each church. And so we had masks on, and he said, please wait until an usher tells you when to come. And while you're waiting, take a moment and you're about to receive our Lord. Maybe just sit with that as you're waiting, because normally it's longer than usual. And I'm there with my mask on, and I just started crying. And I was like, oh my gosh, like with my mask covered, all these tears.
Yeah.
And the thought that went through my mind was, I'm a disaster. Like, and the thing I hate the most is being so out of control that you're a disaster. It's what I've worked my whole life to avoid. I said, but I'm coming to this freaking come and see weekend. You're just going to have to accept my sad carcass of a human being. I am coming to this darn thing.
That's so awesome.
It was such a great weekend. After that weekend, I had no desire to continue discerning that path at all. And there's some great things happened, but it was a beautiful weekend, being in an intentional community of guys. oh my
Yeah.
gosh, I was like, why was I so afraid of this? This is
Mm.
crazy. But
Yeah.
but it's real, right? Like the fears are so
Yeah.
real.
I
Yeah.
love that you said it like that. You're like, I wasn't interested. I was scared.
I was I was
Like,
I was
it's not any-
terrified.
it's just,
I'm
yeah.
like,
So real.
just the idea of like my deepest fear, maybe one of them would be, yeah, John, you're actually just called to be celibate and not have children and not have a wife and not have that home experience. You're called to this other thing. I'm like, and he's going to make it happen. He's done all the, like at that point after the retreat experience, that wasn't quite my disposition, but there were definitely like those fears were there. I'm sure the devil's happy to go and,
Poke
those fires. Yeah.
Mhm.
It's, and it's so intense. But I think that, the original question, I think, Nicole, something you said made triggered a memory that even during this time, I would run into, say, some of our nun friends, who I think all of you know. I remember, and multiple people would say this at different times, when people would say like, John, how are you? And I'm like, like what version of how am I?
Oh, do you want celibate human or do you want good?
Yeah.
What's your preferred response?
Like, I don't want
Marcus
to
or-
lie to anybody, and so I would just, kind of give the Coles Notes version. And I remember one of these nuns saying, John, she put her hand on my arm, said, John, I know it doesn't feel like this, but you are in such a good place.
Mm.
Like God can work with this. It's like there's I don't know if there's anything left. I don't even know if I have a plan for next year, for how next year is going to go. There's nothing. I don't know what my hopes, what my dreams, what my path is anymore. I can't even control things like eating and sleeping. I got nothing. And it was the helplessness, I think, was for me. And I think coming from a background where you're just like, nope, I always have a plan B. I always have a way forward. If I don't like a situation, I'll just put a positive spin on it and will myself through it, to avoid disappointment, to avoid being let down, to avoid being hurt. And in those moments, I think that disposition that the nun was talking about was like, it's so counterintuitive, but this is now when God can do his best work in us.
Yeah.
And
well, it sounds like you're living out that original retreat message to be still, like in your everyday life, right? And it's like learning a new way of being, right? But it's a good place. And I resonate with that, because I think I've been through similar stuff and I really hate it. But to learn to, but it's like you see new things when you're still, right?
And it's possible for God to lead you in places that because if it's like, if there are plans, and not that we should never have plans or that we shouldn't ever just, like be heading in a direction or anything like that, but it's so like, I resonate with the control part of things, because I want to control everything, because I don't want to be hurt, or I don't want to be like left destitute, or I don't want to be like, I don't want the deepest fears that I have about me and the world and everything else to come true. But then it's like, it shuts out this place of surprise from God. It's like that, even that he could bring you on this retreat, that he has no intention of, as it seems now, he has no intention of making you a Jesuit priest, like this is not your calling or whatever, but that it was not, but it wasn't for that. It was for like maybe giving you peace with that, and having that kind of experience of like community and communion, or like whatever gifts he was giving you at that time. But it's like, I know all the time it's like I shut out the gifts that he wants to give me, because I have such tight control over the things, and it's like this game. Like, I think we might've talked about this at one point, or somebody did anyways. It's like, we're like this, and we get to this point where we're like, okay, Lord, like hands open, whatever you want. And then it's like, we go about our life, and then slowly the fingers just curl.
Because you're like, except not that, and not this, not,
and then all
okay,
all right. What the hell? What is these fists doing? Come on. And then it's like, we have to like, and it's like this cyclic thing. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, I also think that there's a relief about not holding on to stuff, because you know deep down that like it isn't, you can't. Like the truth is you
It's a
actually,
facade.
yeah, exactly. It's a lie. Like we don't
Yeah.
actually have, like, there's a sense in which we have a foundation and security in the Lord that's very real, and that like we can trust that and we can take that to the bank. Like that's real. But the like the bits of life that we try to kind of hold on to, like there isn't, it is not true. Like we're not really holding on to something that's going to stick around or that we can even grasp. So it's like there's and you always kind of know that. So there's always this sort of tension in you where you're like working really hard to keep holding on, because part of you knows that like at any second, like it could go away, and it's sort of this like constant tension. And then when you do actually like let go in your disposition and give it to the Lord, it's scary. And this is actually going to be, I wanted to ask you this question, John, but I know you wanted to say something, but maybe later you can talk about this really quick. And then, but like there is, when you let go, there is also a fear, because you really have to trust, because I think then the lie that the devil tries to fool us with is like, you're wrong. That's not who God is. Like you're sort of banking on this is who God is. And that's how you let go. But then the devil's like, what? Is he really like that? Like, yeah, exactly.
You might be freely floating without a parachute right now.
Right, exactly. Which isn't true, but there's like moments when you're a bit more vulnerable to that needling that can happen. So my question is just gonna be like, does that still happen? And if it does, like, how do you sort of, like refocus and recenter back on the truth, which is like, yeah, God is with you. He has called you, like he knows you, and he knows, like he just knows, and it's going to be okay. But yeah, you also were going to say something else. So maybe say that and then answer.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Remind me of the question if I forget it when I get to it. But all this, the conversations reminded me of this other visual. I think it's on Restore the Glory. It might be Dr. Bob or Jake. They talk about sort of walking with God in trust, being a little bit like when we convert or revert or start taking our faith seriously, is we finally welcome Jesus into our house, and we're like, we're excited. Jesus, come in, like, make yourself comfortable in the living room. This is the kitchen. This is your bedroom. Like, you don't need to go down in the basement. The upper floor is off limits. And that lasts for a while where Jesus camped out and you're like, it's so great. Jesus is in my kitchen and, in his space. And then he says something like, and then he starts knocking down walls. And you're like, oh man, that's so true. Like he starts shaking the place up and you're like, no, that's
like, actually, could you mind?
This isn't in the budget for renovations.
I liked this wall actually.
Yeah.
That's good.
Expose that attic
that
situation.
subway tile on that wall, and it was really pretty and it was really expensive.
Because we don't know what he's doing. It's hard, right? Because it's legitimate. It's hard because we don't know what he's doing. We don't know what his plan is a lot of the time.
But
so
then he's like, hey, listen, I made the subway tile, and like our house actually only exists because of me, and like, you know what I mean? Like he sort of reminds you like, oh, like the foundation that this whole thing is standing on is me. So don't be afraid. Like, like I know the original plan. I'm a contractor. Like we're good.
Yeah, that's right. I'm the contractor. That's right.
He's the architect.
He's the architect. That's way better.
He's like, there's like contractor. 3 sub basements that you don't even know about. So let's just
He's I'll help you explore those. We'll just go slowly.
He's like, and I want to make you a giant closet. Don't you want that? Rachel, don't you want like a walk-in closet?
That sounds like a nightmare.
Yeah.
Like I don't want that many shoes. Yeah.
I love shoes. But yeah, so my question was like, do you have this like reversion to like a moment of fear, and then like how does the Lord help you, go back into that, like the truth?
Yeah, that's something that I think it comes up very often, I think. So this is very strange because this is all playing out in real time. I now don't have so much hindsight to base this on, but what sort of seems to be happening. And for me, I love, and I sort of struggle, but mostly love how each of these paths are just, you're like, who could have customized this better for me?
Right.
And I'm like I said, doing and getting things done is not currently, one of my issues in life.
Right.
And so just give me the plan and I'll go do it and things will be great. And I'll know, oh, in 5 steps, I need to prepare for this thing. So I'm going to start preparing now because I'm very prepared that way. And then we'll execute this plan really, really well, according to how I think it should go. And I just sort of, since really from like even before the retreat, but especially much more consciously since the retreat, life has been very much unfolding one step at a time, which is, it sounds, I don't know, maybe for other people it wouldn't, but there's something I always, that grates against me. I'm like, why not? This is so, this is bad planning to go one step and then we'll figure out the next step. And of course it's saying like, no, there's a plan, but for some reason you will receive it when you need to receive it. And it's trusting someone else's intuition, not yours, and all those types of things. So even now I'm back in school and I'm, leading up to school, I was like, I'm not like the greatest academically minded individual. I'm like doing a master's degree and just all of these things would unfold. And so I think to answer the question, to be sort of sitting in, which is maybe what the whole struggle is for me, but just sitting in the present and saying like, what have I been shown now? What do I know now? What do I not know now? And if I don't know it, is that something I'm invited to pray about or to be still with or to let go of? Versus before, I'd just be constantly moving the chess pieces around the board to sort of orchestrate some particular outcome. So I had this, like I said, the last 12 months have just been a little bit personally wild for me, who likes to really plan things out. But I had an opportunity to go to the Holy Land in May, which was just unbelievable. It's a beautiful, beautiful experience that I don't think I would have appreciated as much if I hadn't gone through the last year leading up to it. I came out of the retreat saying, okay, so one thing I'm very confident about is that I need to stay really close to our Lord, hold the hand or the cloak or whatever analogy you want to use and say, I do trust. I have fears, I have emotional fears, but I do trust that walking with him is safe and it's for my good. And so right after I came back, so I scheduled my interview for the university, application interview, 2 days after I got back from the Holy Land. And I went into it with this super clear mind, and it was the easiest, smoothest interview I've ever participated in. It was a group Zoom interview.
Great.
Which was a new interview
that sounds
format.
Like a nightmare. So
so there's six candidates, I think, all on listening to each other's responses, and just the answers would just come. Like I didn't even really think about it. I was like, whoop, And I was like, okay, I can sit right now in this moment in this interview and not worry about graduation or what is this like. When I think of the idea of in the future maybe practicing psychotherapy, I'm just like, what? Like that was not on the plan. Like that is so different, and I need time to process that. And the good news is I don't have to think about opening a therapy practice right now. I've in particular 2 specific courses that I know for sure is where I can put my time and energy, and I will focus on those. So going back, like that retreat experience, just constantly going back and saying, Lord, where have you shown me the next step? How did those steps go? And I was like, yes, I remember what it was like to take that next step and land, and was like, whoa, I'm on super solid ground. That was a great step to take, little nerve-wracking, and all I have to do, all and only, depending on how you look at it, is focus on the current step or the next step, depending on where you are.
that's so cool.
Sweet.
There's so many questions, but maybe we will have a part 2,
Yeah, that's right. We'll check in with you in a year. You'll be like, I'm a Buddhist monk. Like, what? That did not.
Yeah, I don't know if you get internet connection up in the mountains.
Oh my gosh.
Ah,
Yeah. Now all I can think of is, I don't know why, but everything is coming back to it's me.
I'm the problem.
I'm the problem.
It's me.
Anyways,
so good.
Yeah, thanks so much, John. That's like,
yeah,
I think
you.
This is something, obviously, like, you know, we have these conversations because there's a universal aspect to this of like all of the ways in which all our lives are uncertain, and there's these crossroads and these times where we're like, you know, God is either good or you know, everything is lost.
Yeah.
You know, and yeah, it's just so encouraging to hear just the very real way in which this experience unfolded for you, and like walking with God, because I think and it's important to say this, right? At every point in this journey, you were committed to walking with the Lord. Like there was kind of a disposition that you had, like you were angry with him and all these things were going on, but you had this kind of commitment to keep walking with him. And I think there's a way in which that's always the call for us, like whatever small little way in which we can keep walking with him.
Yeah.
And somehow I feel like we always come back to that in all of our episodes, like just whatever tiny little
whatever agency we have, whatever little ability that we have to choose, just to choose with that.
Yeah, exactly. Whatever that might be. So, but it's so good to hear sometimes that in flesh, like that real way in which that's happened in someone's life, and you know, just as encouragement for how God and what God is doing in each of our lives. So thank you very much. That was so beautiful.
Yeah.
And now on to God winks. Woohoo. I think both Aaron and John, you too, right?
Not me, one? Nicole.
Oh, Nicole
and
sorry.
John.
Nicole and John. Okay. So
I was like panicking. No, not me.
Okay. Yeah. Nicole, let's start with you and then we'll have John.
Sure. Mine is really like inconsequential, and it's going to sound really anticlimactic after this beautiful sharing that you gave, John. But so I was at Aldi the other day. Aldi is, you know, a grocery store, and it's really inexpensive, and you have to bring a quarter to get a cart, and you also have to bring your own grocery bags. And so I was going to go grocery shopping on the weekend, and I was also just like tired, and when I'm tired, I get kind of scatterbrained. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to go to Aldi. I have to remember grocery bags. So I brought my grocery bags, and I was so proud of myself for remembering grocery bags. And then I got to Aldi, and then I was like, oh, and also the quarter. And I didn't have a quarter.
Oh no.
So I was like, well, I'm here, so I'm just gonna go in and we'll just figure it out. So I had cloth grocery bags. So I just like put groceries in the bag as I was shopping. Right. I'm like, if someone stops me, then someone stops me. But for now, I'll just use my bag. And so anyway, so it was fine. I didn't have too many groceries to buy, and it was a little awkward by the end, but it worked out. Anyways, I got to the checkout line, and the way that they do the groceries is that as you're unloading your cart, they pull up the previous person's cart, they load your groceries into that, and then they use your cart for the next one, right? Which works and makes sense if everyone has a cart with a quarter in it. So they pull up this cart with a quarter in it, and they put my groceries into it. And turns out there was all these extra carts around. So then I all of a sudden had a cart on my way out of the grocery store. And so then I put my groceries in the cart, put the cart back, and now I have a quarter.
I think you made a quarter
out of nothing.
I was in my mind, I'm like, ooh, I just found a way to make more cash, But
so
anyway,
funny.
so now it just felt like one of those little moments where I'm like, the Lord provided for me a cart, at least to get my stuff to the car.
Yeah.
And now I have a quarter for the next time I go to Aldi, because I didn't have one.
Amazing.
So
perfect.
Don't spend it all.
That's
Make sure you hold on to that.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
I know, right?
That's worth like 10 Canadian dollars.
I
I was gonna say,
Yeah, right.
Exchange rate. My goodness.
Gosh,
That's
for
right.
all our
Down
American
payment on
listeners.
a very small house.
Yeah.
The Canadian dollar is suffering right now.
That's right.
Speaking of suffering.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's my God wink.
Okay, let's hear it, John. I'm
That was
excited to hear yours.
No, I actually, Nicole, I love your God wink, because something that really struck me in all of this was like he loves the little details, and like his sense of humor is hilarious
I
sometimes.
know.
Sometimes
Yes.
it's not as hilarious.
Sometimes it's hilarious for him, but not for you. You're like,
Sometimes
I know you think this is funny.
Yeah.
But
Sometimes
I'm
it's funny
like-
later.
Yeah.
It's like noticing little details in a painting. You're like, whoa, I never noticed like there's like initials or in the painting. But so my God wink is actually connected to my story. I was so this whole idea of going back to school, doing a master's and stuff. After like 15 years almost or something out of undergrad. Anyways, too long. But I had applied to a Christian university here in Toronto that has a program, and I was like, the time, it's a private college, the money. Did I make this up? Like, is this yet another one of my plans,
Right.
that I've just made up, and this is the next thing to distract me or whatever? And I went on campus, I met with the admission staff, and I was taken on a tour of the campus by one of the students, and we're walking past the bookstore, which was closed, but there's like these big windows. And I look into the bookstore as we're walking past. He's like, here's the bookstore. And I look at it, and there's a big sign on one of the shelves looking right out the window. And it just says, "Be still and know that I am God."
Oh man, that's awesome.
And I don't know if I just started laughing, and she was
That's
like trying to figure out why I
awesome.
was taking a picture of their empty bookstore. But I was like, the quote, it means something to me. So anyways, I just like
That's
the
so
little,
cool.
like, I didn't need that, but I will gladly take it.
Yep.
Yeah,
That's
is
great.
awesome.
Yeah.
That's great.
That is awesome.
God is good.
All the time.
Yeah, I didn't mean to go in that direction. It's such a cheesy one, but I was like, but it's true. He is
All the
good, and he
time.
is good
God
all the
is
time.
good.
It's true.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, John.
Yeah,
and
thank you.
yeah, and thanks everybody for listening. Yeah, we're praying for you guys, and we'll be on here next week.
Yeah.
Yeah,
God bless you, everybody.
God bless you. Bye.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of In the Thicket. If you like what you hear, give us a rating and hit that subscribe button. We have new episodes every Monday with more stories and honest conversations about life when the going gets rough, and the hope and humor amidst it all. We'd love for you to join our community on Instagram and Facebook at In the Thicket Podcast. While you're there, let us know how we can pray for you. God bless, and see you next week.